Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Orbit for the week of ending June 30th, 2023. My name is Pat. I'm here with my co-host Wack from Rocket Fuel. How are you, Wack?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
We're working on some new formatting for the show. The IT department's been real busy backstage, working on a few things that we hope to show off the next few weeks. But in the meantime, we got a busy episode today as usual, and we'll start with stats. So we'll take a look at deposits first, as we usually do. And things have kind of slowed down a little bit over the last couple of weeks. Wack, what's your take? Where are we in terms of the deposit pool?
Yeah, so the balance between the new node operators or new mini pools starting up and deposits is kind of like an equilibrium, which is really nice. So that's the first thing. However, it's slightly lower than what would be like really great. I think we kind of got spoiled with May, where we had 1,000 ETH deposited every day minimum during the whole month, with some days being as high as 10,000, etc. And those are the kind of days that I think spoiled us. And now that we're coming down from that, which is normal, it's a little bit disappointing for us because we want to see at those high levels the whole time, right? But it's not quite working out that way. However, people are still joining Rocket Pool. They're still spinning up new validators through Rocket Pool, and that's great. So if we look at like the weekly amounts, those are still quite respectable. Yeah, right there. Yeah. So getting like 15,000 last week, that's a really good week. This week is sadly a little bit low. Like we'll probably, the way we're going right now, we'll probably end up with like 6,000 or 7,000, which will be the lowest since before the deposit pool change in the beginning of April. But we kind of broke the trend last week and bounced upwards a little bit, but this week's not been good. And of course, there's been a lot of FUD about the Rocket Pool ecosystem and like the RPL token and all that kind of stuff this last week as well. So I think that kind of factors into all of it. But node operator growth is still happening, mini pool growth is still happening, and that's all strong. So those are the kind of things that I'm looking at a little bit more closely now.
Yeah, if we look at node registrations over the last week, it looks, over the last, since Atlas, we've been doing, anywhere from the current week 28 to 90. So we're still growing. People are still setting up nodes. Folks are still buying RPL, which will take us to one stat before we jump to RPL. I'd like to go over is Shifrin. We've got the concerns for execution client diversity, and Rocket Pool community has stepped up in a big way. And over the last couple weeks, we've had more improvement in terms of our diversity of our clients amongst node operators. Looks like now, as you explained last week, we can only measure this when proposals come through on the node operators end. Right now, we're at 46.6% on gETH. It was 51%, so we continue to inch downward. Nethermind seems to be the biggest benefactor. It went from 16.3% to 19.3%. These numbers are as of June 25th. So what's your take on our diversity initiative that Shifrin has
So yesterday was yesterday was the last day. So I think maybe this weekend at some point Shifrin will put together like the stats as of now. Basically, that bottom screenshot will be updated with the new information, and I expect gETH to maybe be down somewhere around 46%, and Besu and Nethermind to be slightly higher, and then the unknown number be a bit higher as well, just because the people who switched in the beginning of the campaign will start getting proposals, and we'll start seeing those numbers change a little bit. But this has been a huge success. I think over 50 or 60 node operators switched from a minority client from gETH to a minority client. And of course, we have to remember that Rocket Pool to begin with was a lot more sensitive to these issues compared to other staking services. So, Rocket Pool being 51% gETH was already way better than what we saw on other protocols, like, being 70-80% geth overall on Ethereum. So we were good to begin with, and now we're just getting even better. So it's a huge success of a campaign. Huge congrats to Schifrin, like the work that he did and the results that they're getting because of this has been amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that these numbers kind of remind me of on the consensus side? There was a time not long ago where Prism was the overwhelming client, and to the community's concern, that has now come down to a safer level. And really, what you have on the consensus side is in the 30% ranges, you have Lighthouse and Prism. And I'm wondering that once the execution client diversity comes into more equilibrium, you're going to have two dominant clients like perhaps geth and Nethermind with Bezu and I think rETH, or what do you call it, rETH, coming out as kind of a smaller, very minority clients. Do you see that happening here with execution clients, where we're going to have, one that's 35%, one that's 36%, and then the rest?
Yeah, so the reason why we never got the push on the execution side up to now was because there was still some skepticism about whether or not Nethermind or Bisu, Aragon or rETH would be able to handle handle node operation reliably. And whenever there would be some issues, it'd be like, oh, this time you had a problem, or this time Nethermind had a problem. And of course, geth has had problems too, but I think a lot of people in the community were not comfortable asking people to switch because they didn't want them to go to a service that wasn't going to give them closest to 100% uptime possible. And with that in mind, that's why geth has been able to be as dominant as it has been for so long. But I think you're hearing a lot more people now in different places saying that don't use geth because the others are just as good, especially Nethermind. Nethermind has grown in reputation so much recently, and people are really, really happy with Nethermind. So I guess that's one of those things where we'll see this play out over the next 3 to 6 months on an Ethereum wide scale, and I think by the end of that we'll be in a much healthier situation.
Yeah, I feel confident as well. And Nethermind's most recent release, it runs really well on low power devices like the Proteus that Joe it makes, which before you needed to have, I think, a minimum of 32 gigabytes of memory, which small power devices typically don't have. Mm-hmm. And now Nethermind's running pretty well on a 16 gigabyte memory. Yeah. So that's great. That's a big improvement for Nethermind.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really good because you need to see that staking is available to as many people as possible, and hardware requirements, of course, are much less than the ETH requirements in terms of cost and RPL requirements in the Rocket Pool environment, but it's still a barrier to entry, and that reducing those barriers to entry as much as possible is wonderful.
Sure. All right, let's move on to, let's talk about the RPL token, part of our stats. I have this tweet from Ethan Hughes. It says, the best time to buy is when there's blood in the streets. RPL had a pretty big sell-off last week, but when you zoom out, it's still up only against ETH. Also, the Uniswap liquidity is pretty weak, below 0.02 ratio, causing more drastic price drops when people sell. And he's got a link here with, if you look at the channel, we're kind of at the bottom of the up only channel. This is an ETH RPL ratio. So we're up 0.02. For a while there, we were in a range of 0.025, 0.026. So we're kind of right at that bottom range. And the way I look at it, WAC, is, fundamentals of our Rocket Pool haven't changed. We're still growing node operators. We're integrating more with DeFi for our ETH. The team is still building. We're coming, in the next 6 months, expect another upgrade. And so, these things happen. Prices go up, prices go down. What are your thoughts on RPL?
Well, first of all, there's a popular saying about like technical analysis, which is what the chart you're showing on your screen is. The making upward channels of price. Like I've heard people refer to it as astrology for crypto bros and or trading bros, and that's kind of my stance on it. I know that might seem a bit derogatory to some people that I respect quite a lot. Like shout out to Find Your Moon in the Elliott Waves thread. Like I love Moon and love his analysis, but I don't really pay too much attention to like these lines drawn on the charts, right? But the truth of the matter is that look, right now, Rocket Pool's price is lower than people were happy about, and that brings out negativity. That brings out a lot of FUD in the community, and that's kind of disappointing. But like a lot of people got in that period in the last like few months where prices were higher than they are now. So they're underwater in their position, right? Like they're at a loss, and that's a shame. But if this chart is to go by, like, which I am skeptical about, then hopefully in the next like few months we'll be hitting the upper ranges of 0.05 or 0.06 of the channel, if that's what you go towards. The next image that he has is a lot more important here, and it just shows that price volatility at the point that we're at now is really drastic, because any sell like really can hit the price, because there's such few people buying RPL at prices lower than where we are. Buying RPL. Yeah. So the buy side liquidity is quite thin. So that means that you get a sell and the price gets hit quite hard. But thankfully, I think this 0.02 mark where we are right now is kind of like a psychological barrier of sorts, and I feel like whenever the price goes below that, then people are like buying at that price point. So hopefully it'll become a zone of support, and it'll be an area where we can bounce up from if the market like starts to get a little bit more positive about altcoins again. It's just the cycles of the market. Like altcoins had a bit of a run. Well, especially Rocket Pool had a bit of a run going into like these narrative trades with the merge and then withdrawals and like the post Atlas growth period. And I think that's just a bit fatigued from that, and people are taking profits, which has really hit us.
Yeah.
But it's normal cycle like stuff. I don't think I've seen anything that is alarming me directly. I know other people are alarmed, and that's fine. But the things that I focus on are protocol growth, and also developer growth, and the community cohesion, and all that kind of stuff is like just as great as always. So I'm not too worried about it.
Sure. Yeah, and if we go back to stats, you're talking there reminded me of how much RPL is staked, and we look on Rocket Scan, 44.76% of RPL supply is staked in the protocol, and I think that's up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but say 6 months ago, wasn't that like in 34%, 35%?
Yeah.
And so. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, I was just saying that there are, you have the speculators who will buy RPL on the open market, and there might be short-term traders. They see a profit, they sell. But I think what this does on the upside, you see people who have confidence in Rocket Pool. They're buying RPL, they're staking it when they set up their node. But when you take supply off the market, it makes low liquidity, which then we have a big sell, contributes to a lower price. The opposite is true as well. If you had a big buyer and there's low liquidity, the price will go up a lot. And I think.
Sorry, Karen.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. That's what we're seeing around the 0.02 mark right now, is that as people sell into that, then people are buying into it as well. So it's just we're finding kind of an equilibrium here. The thing to see would be, do we use this as a place where we can go upwards again from, or are we just going to run out of people buying at this point and then we might dump lower? So it's
Sure.
definitely something to watch and definitely something to keep an eye on. But at the moment, I'm not too worried.
Yeah, and Jasper, on this topic, he proposed two improvement proposals for Rocket Pool. He tweets here, he proposes two new RPIPs. Number one, movement of 25% of new funds to the IMC for the incentivizing of RPL/ETH and or RPL/rETH liquidity. And movement of 25% of new funds to the IMC for proper funding of a cross-chain rETH liquidity expansion. This goes back to some of the reforms to the ODAO, and if we're going to reduce the amount of RPL given to the ODAO, how do we reroute that, and then what do we do with it? And this idea of specifically of RPL, it seems to have a liquidity issue, that this is going to address that. What do you think?
Yeah, this is like, I read through the tweet thread and I looked at the DAO forum posts. I haven't actually commented on it yet, but I'm just letting the idea kind of like marinate in my mind for a few days before I weigh in with my opinion. But I think, like at first glance, I am hugely supportive of this change. At least, going into the next few months or maybe even a year, I think now is the time where we can really use this money to establish Rocket Pool as a blue chip DeFi token, and having liquidity is just crucial for that. Like, it's invaluable how important having liquidity is, and building on layer 2s, getting those like scaffolds in place for this idea of an L2 summer or an L2 like mania phase. If we can get everything ready for that to happen, then we'll be really well positioned to do that. So at first glance, my first thoughts are that I'm incredibly supportive of this. I'm going to dig into it a little bit more and engage with some of the ideas that other people have before I present my opinions to the community for whatever value they have. But I'm really liking Jasper's point here, and I think this is going to be huge because liquidity is so important to have. And there's the idea of paying for a Chainlink Oracle for the RPL token, which will unlock a lot of doors on DeFi for RPL as well, and it's going to help us a lot. So it's going to be expensive to do this stuff. Definitely, it's going to cost thousands of dollars a month, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. However, the gains from that will reverberate through the years, I think.
Yeah, I agree. If you go out 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, the growth is going to be on L2s. And we have some rETH on the L2s, but to really drive it home that rETH is going to be a staple of these, it makes sense now. It's, like you said, during the bear market, let's get all the ducks in a row. Let's provide liquidity depth. So for when everyone comes back, everyone's, and there's the L2 summers, we're right there, ready to go.
Absolutely.
And it makes sense to, right now, the talk of diverting some of that ODAO funding to the IMC, and those questions will need to be answered. Well, what's the IMC going to do with the additional funding? At first glance, this seems like an excellent idea.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea was that the IMC, nobody would get it right. We'd just reduce our inflation potentially, or what should we do with that money? And there's pros and cons to both, but I think the pros of using that to really push the IMC's work is wonderful. You can't beat that.
Right. Okay, let's move on to, I had Jasper up. Let's talk about him again. He's got another great tweet here. He pointed out an example of a solo node operator converted 12 of their validators into nearly 50 Rocket Pool validators. So this is an example where, he had the node operator about 400 ETH, but this will now enable 1,200 more rETH to be minted. So it's that multiplier effect that we see with Rocket Pool that's really unique. And this is a great example of it, where the solo operator made a decision, hey, it's more profitable to run some Rocket Pool validators. Why don't I do that? And in return, it now multiplies the amount of rETH that can be minted and put on the market.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this?
So this goes into my win-win-win thesis that I kind of came up with, where by having a solo operator coming to Rocket Pool, the solo node operator wins because they make more money. Rocket Pool wins because its TVL grows and it allows more people to buy the rETH token. And then the Ethereum wins because you are now getting more ETH in the hands of decentralized actors and people who are more likely to respect client diversity, people who are more likely to represent geographic diversity, and these are things that Ethereum really needs, and we need people running stakes from home because that's the best in class. So it's like win-win-win. Everyone wins, and instead of having 12 validators, solo validators, you've not now got 50, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's really really great that this is possible. I just wish more solo operators did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Our next story is I combined these two. We got Nouns DAO and Nexus Mutual. The treasuries there they have a couple proposals to diversify into rETH. And this is one of the, I think, one of the most important growth, for growth of Rocket Pool in general. Some of these treasuries are sitting on a ton of ETH or STETH. If they can convert a percentage of that into rETH, will really help propel Rocket Pool in the future. So your thoughts on Nexus Mutual and Nouns?
Yeah, so each of these proposals, like, there's a whole bunch of different, like, DAOs and communities that are talking about shifting some of their ETH or STETH into rETH, and they're at different stages of acceptance, non-acceptance. It's really great when we see that, people are at least considering this now, whereas, just a few months ago, it was kind of a non-issue because the liquidity for rETH wasn't there. We didn't have a Chainlink Oracle. All of those things were just not in place. However,
Right.
like, I think this is whether these, protocols at this point adopt the proposals or not is, I think, besides the point. The fact that these discussions are even taking place, I think, is incredibly bullish for Rocket Pool because we're just gaining so much more legitimacy than we had just a few months ago, and that is fantastic. I think that we'll start seeing some of these treasuries swapping their ETH into rETH. We've seen that Arrow Air did that, the EV Mavericks did that. A few others have said that they would do it, but they haven't really done it yet. but
Right.
we'll start seeing that, I think, happening in the next few weeks and months. And then once that does happen, then I think we'll see like a flood of them coming in the weeks after that.
I agree, and we'll keep an eye on this trend on the weekly orbit in the weeks to come. Another real quick news item: NodeSet was awarded a grant from the Ethereum Foundation, which is fantastic. NodeSet's going to be working as almost like a layer on top of Rocket Pool. Could you explain to our listeners exactly what NodeSet is, and what's the time frame do you expect for NodeSet to go live?
So NodeSet, like you said, Pat, is like layer 2 for Rocket Pool, which the way it works is like instead of bringing your ETH to Rocket Pool or your RPL, what you'll do is you'll send it to NodeSet instead. So they'll be having people depositing ETH to them. They'll also have people depositing RPL to them, and then they will put those together in bundles and send those to existing Rocket Pool node operators who will then run that stake on their current nodes. So it'll be an add-on on the Rocket Pool smart node where you can kind of opt into putting on some of these NodeSet validators on top of your existing machine and running them. The advantage of this will be that node operators will get profits like that they wouldn't be getting otherwise. What would happen with people who deposit to NodeSet is like there's a whole lot of people who have RPL sitting around that there's nothing that they can do with it, and there's very few options of what they can do with it, and NodeSet will give you a really good option. So you'll deposit your RPL, you'll get like a NS RPL back in return, and it'll be like a rETH like token that accrues value as the RPL underlying it accrues staking rewards. So those are the kind of things that will be happening with NodeSet, and I think that it's going to be really really great. And with the ETH as well, they'll take that and they'll charge a smaller percentage for accepting that because that's going to go and be the stake, and then the people will divide out the rewards that go from that. So it's going to be a really really cool project. I'm hugely optimistic about how it's going to work out. I think Nick and Wanda are fantastic people to be running this project. Like I've had nothing but like extremely positive experiences with both of them, and I'm really like a huge cheerleader for this project.
Yeah, so at the high level, what's the problem that NodeSet solves?
Okay, so the problem it solves
What do you
basically is
think?
that there's all this RPL, that there's nothing that people can do with it, and there's ETH that people have that they want to stake with Rocket Pool, but they want to earn more than just the our ETH rewards. They want to get higher rewards than that. So NodeSet will give you an option to deposit your ETH and get back like an SETH or whatever they're going to call it, and that will have slightly higher rewards than our ETH built into it, because they won't be paying commission in the same way, because that'll be on the node operator side instead of on the protocol side. So they'll actually be getting some rewards built into that. I don't know exactly how the tokenomics of it are going to be divided out, or how the incentives are going to be divided out, but that's like the kind of like the rough idea of what it's going to look like. And if I made a mistake in explaining that, please correct me so I don't make the mistake again.
And am I wrong to think the team, they'd like to have, is it testnet or a mainnet up by the end of the year?
Oh yeah,
Is
sorry,
that- I
yes,
don't
you asked that. So the next Ethereum upgrade is going to include a couple of things that we talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago that I think would be really helpful for NodeSet. So I don't think they're going to be going forward with this until that happens. So the best case scenario is probably like end of October or November this year, and then the worst case scenario being like beginning of 2024. But I think that's fine. Like, the sooner the better, ideally. But once Ethereum has those upgrades, it's really going to help NodeSet a lot.
Great. Okay, and on to our final news item. I posted a tweet from Rocket Fuel. Take off into DeFi introduces Diva staking. Claim the airdrop Rocket Pool node operators receive without using your node private keys. So you just recorded this, I think, yesterday. Tell us about Diva. Tell us about the episode and your thoughts about Diva staking and the airdrop.
Right, so Diva staking, basically Diva is a competitor to Rocket Pool. The thing that sets them aside is they will allow node operators to stake with 1 ETH instead of 8 ETH that Rocket Pool says, and they also have built-in DVT technology. So that means like multiple people will be like sharing their attestations, so they have much better uptime than like an individual node operator would. So those two things are things that kind of set Diva aside. One of the things that we have to remember is like at the moment there is no Diva product on the market. So there's just like, this idea of a project that will occur at some point in the coming months. What Diva are saying that they're doing is sending out the Diva governance token to people in the Ethereum ecosystem. Now there's 4 categories of people that they've chosen. One is like Ethereum OGs. Then they have node operators. They have people who have some kind of like a rETH or STETH, I think, and then other people in the community as well. So I think those are the categories. So what they've done is they've sent out Diva tokens to these groups of people, and at the moment, the tokens have no value, but people think that the tokens will get value later, and also that they are non-transferable, so they're just in your node wallet, and there's nothing you can really do with them. At the moment, you can't move them or anything like that. So that's where we stand at the moment with Diva. People are kind of like, cheerleading Diva because, we need more decentralized staking solutions on the market. Just Rocket Pool at the moment is the only one, and that's definitely not enough. So people are kind of cautiously optimistic about that. There was some controversies about this airdrop. Like the first one was that they oversubscribed the airdrop, so they've got 100,000 tokens to give out, but they've made 100 million tokens to give out, but they've made 200 million people tokens worth of like available to them, and then they're making it first come first serve. So that sense of urgency normally like has some scammy vibes with it. The second thing that they did was they sent the airdrop to the node address, and people have this idea that you should only stake with your node, you shouldn't do anything else with those keys. And to claim this airdrop, the idea was that you would have to import your private keys for your node into like a hardware wallet and then interact with the Diva website to get access to your tokens. People were kind of hesitant to do that because there's this idea, don't do anything with your private keys of your node, it's risky, it's not good, and you don't expose yourself to that issue for potentially like $1,000 or a couple of $1,000 or whatever it might end up being that this airdrop is worth. So this episode came about yesterday because people figured out that there's a like a protocol called earnify, which is EARNI.FI. And earnify will let you claim the airdrop through their platform. So I made this video kind of telling people what Diva staking is, what the purpose of the airdrop is, and how they can claim the airdrop without having to load their node private keys onto any kind of wallet through the Earnify system. So the way that it works is you'll put the address where the Diva tokens have been made available, and then you'll claim through like any other wallet that you have, like, you know, your regular day-to-day wallet, which is what I did on my episode yesterday. So it really helped a lot of people already claim their Diva tokens, you know, people who were hesitant about claiming them. And yeah, I guess as long as it helped a few people get their tokens, then I think it's a huge success.
Yeah, and this takeoff into DeFi, I think, is a real service for the community. You kind of occasionally post a new DeFi protocol, walk through the steps. I think that's really handy because we talk about a lot of stuff, but then actually doing it, to see it is very helpful. So
yeah, thank you.
Check it out. We'll put the link in the show notes for everyone to click on. And so that concludes this week's episode. WAC, enjoy this holiday weekend here in the United States.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time. Just remember, folks, like and subscribe. None of this was financial advice. You know, crypto's risky. So is oh gosh, I sound like Ryan Sean Adams. Crypto's risky. So is DeFi, and so is Diva. So is Rocket Pool. But yeah, just we're just talking crypto and having fun doing it. And so we will see you guys all next week, and I'll see you as well.
Thanks for having me, Pat. See you next time.